Tonight, our keynote speaker is Shane Hodges, who wrote this book, It's Time to Be You. So I'm going to bring him up, and he's going to talk about the book, and he's going to talk about how to be authentically you.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate Dave and the Colorado LGBTQI Bar Association for having me here tonight. As Dave mentioned, I wrote a book. It's my first book. I wrote it, and it was published earlier this year. Thank you. It is very much geared toward authenticity. It is being referred to as a deep dive into self-reflection and figuring out how to be your most authentic self. I wanted to start by asking a few questions of you all. If you can raise your hands, if the answer is yes. The first question I have is, are you or have you ever been a people pleaser? A few of you are being honest. Next, is family important to you? And we can discuss the definition of family for all of us later. Have you ever felt ashamed of your sexuality and or your sexual preferences? Hands are a little lower that time around. And at any point in your life, did you ever feel as though you were not enough? One last question. At any point in your life, have you felt as though you had to tone it down, minimize yourself, pretend to be something you weren't, play a character or a role to fit in? Yeah, look around the room. Almost everybody here has felt that way at some point in time. And my own struggles with that is what led me to write this book. One thing that Dave did not mention, in addition to being the author of this book, I am a licensed professional counselor and do mental health counseling therapy for individuals, couples, some family work, trauma work, and generally individuals who are trying to figure out themselves, either rediscovering themselves and in some cases, like it was for me, figuring themselves out for the first time later in life. So I want to touch on some of these things. Let's go to the people-pleasing part. I grew up in a town of 70 people in rural Nebraska in the 80s. Yeah, wow, okay, thank you. I'm glad you understand. And I knew I was gay at 10. I didn't come out until I was 23 because at that point in time, that shit was not okay. And that was, indicated to me both directly as well as indirectly. What happens in that situation is we do start to tweak our behaviors. We start to do those things where we hide or we play a part. And for a long time, I told people, I'm a really good liar. And then I realized, actually, I'm not a liar. I'm a really good actor. I realized that I learned those skills because I had to act a certain way in order to be accepted, to fit in, and or to not be found out. And those choices were done out of fear. Unfortunately, fear is a very strong motivator. In regard to people pleasing, I come from a long line of people pleasers. My mother is probably the best people pleaser I've ever met. And what does it mean to be a people pleaser? What is something people pleasers do? Well, we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We want to make sure everybody's happy. We want to do whatever we can for everybody else. And we have zero boundaries. None. And why is that problematic? Well, we end up doing a bunch of shit that we don't want to do out of obligation or expectation or, again, to avoid hurting somebody else, making somebody else upset. And I finally found out that I wasn't okay with that. So I decided I need to step away from that. But that's problematic. I'm going to go on to the family part. I already mentioned I come from a long line of people pleasers. But growing up, family was everything. My mother is one of 11 children. My father's one of 4. Most of them lived within an hour of each other. So there was no such thing as a small gathering growing up. I'm going to use Christmas as an example because it's the holidays. Christmas looked like Christmas Eve going to my mother's parents' house for a soup supper, which I don't know if y'all are Midwest or not, but everybody makes soups and a bunch of other candies and shit that goes on the table, and you just graze for about 8 hours. So we do that, and then that night we'd go to a late church, usually around 10 o'clock. Then we'd go to Dad's friend's house and hang out with them. Then we'd wake up Christmas morning at the butt crack of dawn, because my brother and sister thought that was cool. I've never been a morning person. And open our gifts. Go to Dad's parents, open gifts out there and have a big breakfast. Go to one of Mom's brothers or sisters for lunch, have a big turkey dinner. Then go back to Dad's brother's house or our house and have leftovers. It was just eating for like 24 hours straight. And the thing about family is that you kind of overlooked certain things. That's where the people-pleasing comes back in. The people-pleasing allowed you to overlook things like the alcoholism, and the abuse, and the hypocrisy, and the ignorance. And in the end, the excuse was always, well, they're family. Again, for those of us in the LGBTQ communities, we've learned to have different definitions about family. So that was something I had to figure out and realize that for me, I'm not going to just automatically respect somebody and or give them a pass because they're related to me. If somebody treats me, thank you, if somebody treats me poorly, they don't deserve my respect. They don't deserve me in their lives, quite frankly. And then I want to talk about the aspect of feeling ashamed about sexual preferences. Again, I mentioned earlier, I knew I was gay at 10. I didn't come out until I was 23 when I left and came out here, because I knew I couldn't be myself if I stayed there. How many of you out there had to leave in order to be yourself? Yeah. How many of you feel like you still can't go back there and be yourself? Yeah, it's unfortunate. So one of the things that I would do is, from about 10 through 23, and quite frankly a few years after that, I would try to convince myself I wasn't gay, or do things to not be gay. I would go to church, and I would pull out the hymnal, and I would flip to the back, where they had all the ceremonies, and I would read the wedding ceremony, and incorporate the name of any female I thought was remotely nice, and that I liked, as my bride-to-be. Then in high school, my senior year, you could buy one of those books where you fill out all the stuff and tape in all the clippings from newspapers, yes, I'm that old, and photographs and other things, and you'd answer questions. And one of the questions was, where will you be in 10 years? So in 1994, when I filled that out, my answer was, I will be married to a woman, sorry, no offense, and with 2 children and a dog. Now, I would like to point out, I also had another answer in there that said I was going to be an architect living in California making $29,000 a year. Yeah. Whew, I was gonna be balling. And so, you know, it's just, again, something to recognize that we've all done our stuff, and it's okay to allow yourself to be yourself. We're gonna get more to that in a minute. And then the aspect of feeling like you are not enough. I literally have to laugh at this. I'm like, really? Like, I was a, individual who lived in a household with a brother and a father who loved every sport, and I had no interest in any of them. And my dad didn't know what to do with me. I was a total mama's boy. My brother was good at every sport, and he's younger, so that just sucked, because I had to deal with, competing with that. I was short, I was scrawny. Imagine this height and about 25 pounds lighter. That's what I was as a freshman in high school. But I will say I was the only person who could bench press my own weight. 105 pounds, baby. Woo. All right. And did I mention I was a big old homo? So yeah, enough said. So basically, I want to think about the aspect of other people and worrying about what they think. By the time I got to high school, I was so concerned about what other people thought. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be normal, which I knew I wasn't, but I couldn't say that. And it was a lie after lie after lie. I dated girls. I even had sex with girls. Yeah, it happened. But it took me a long time. Unfortunately, I don't like to admit how long it took me, but it took me much longer than I'd like to admit to realize I'm not okay being inauthentic anymore. I realized also I had to be the one to give myself permission. And the hard part about that is there's work involved. And you gotta own your own shit. And if any of you have been in therapy before or done any work on your own, you know that most of us don't like to acknowledge our own stuff. And most of us just want the easy route. So, one, we either try to help other people with their shit, because then we feel like, oh, well, at least we're helping somebody. But our stuff doesn't change. What I realized though, and this was just within the last few years, 5-ish, the effect that inauthenticity has on you is so oppressive. It's exhausting. Because you have to maintain it. And what I found out is when you are yourself, you don't have to worry about maintaining the lie. You don't have to worry about people catching you or finding you out, because you're you. So what happened and pushed me to this place was, I hit a point where I started to recognize that anytime I was being inauthentic, I felt gross and didn't like myself. And I finally gave it a name. I called it the ick. Anybody ever have that experience where you're like, you know you're not, this isn't you, but you're doing it. And I made the conscious decision in that moment. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I had to have a conversation with my husband. I was like, you need to be aware of this because we live together. And part of it was his work. He was in the political realm. Ooh, I don't do well in political circles where everyone is trying to kiss ass or suck up or is like, ooh, I'm cool because I'm part of this circle. I don't care. If you don't like me for me, I don't want to be part of your circle. Basically, that started a few years back, and that led to the book. What I want to say about the book is, this is a great place to start if you feel you are tired of being inauthentic, you maybe aren't quite ready or able to access or start therapy. But what this book is a workbook. It's a very easy read because most of it is filling in questions. And the way we determine, in my opinion, how to be our most authentic self is to question things. Question yourself. And no one else needs to see your answers or hear your answers, but you have to be honest with yourself. In the end, it comes down to digging deeper. You answer the question, and almost every question in this book will be followed up by why or why not. You really got to be honest with yourself as to why do you not like that thing or why does that thing make you feel that way, okay? So what I want to say to everybody is, at 48 years old, I can finally say I'm very happy with who I am. I know who I am, and I'm comfortable being who I am. And I hope for the rest of you that you can get to that point or get to a point where you are more authentic than you currently are. Because it can be the most liberating thing you ever experience. So, my name is Shane Hodges. My book is It's Time to Be You, How to Become Your Most Authentic Self. I challenge you to be yourself, whatever that looks like, regardless of what anybody else says. Again, thank you all for having me here, and I'd like to say